Introduction. The call of the cosmic mystery. The black hole as a metaphysical portal and an invitation to expand consciousness. The mentor invites the listener to imagine standing beneath the night sky, gazing upward at stars that appear motionless, yet in truth, are dancing silently across the infinite expanse. He reminds us that behind this dark celestial curtain lie realms where the laws of physics bend and dissolve into enigmas that defy comprehension, black holes. They are not merely astronomical phenomena studied by scientists. They are living symbols of profound transformation, thresholds where matter and consciousness converge. The invitation is to step across this invisible boundary as one who dares to cross the threshold of the soul itself. The voice carries the gentle wisdom of someone who knows that true understanding is never forced by haste, but unfolds when surrendered to the rhythm of the cosmos. He explains that a black hole is not an empty void, but a field of immense potency, capable of swallowing light itself and exposing paradoxes that only reveal their meaning when the mind dares to open. In life, moments of loss carry the same quality. What appears to be an ending when viewed deeply may serve as a passageway into a higher and more luminous dimension of being. Here, the narrator offers a simple yet powerful practice. Close your eyes, breathe slowly and deeply, and envision a sphere of darkness pulsing within the center of your chest. Rather than fearing this darkness, allow yourself to observe it as a fertile core, a womb of infinite creativity, where new ideas are waiting to be born. He explains that this small exercise mirrors what occurs throughout the universe itself. From the pressure of extreme compression arises the possibility of boundless expansion. In the stillness within, energy finds the chance to reorganize. Within the very first minute, the mentor softly reminds the listener, if you feel the call to expand your awareness, like a star breaking through its horizon, then like this video and subscribe to the channel. This action is not merely digital, it is metaphysical. It establishes a quantum link between your energy and the larger community gathered here. Each click opens a frequency of sharing, ensuring that the wisdom you receive flows outward and multiplies into the lives of countless others who are also seeking transformation. Supporting becomes a sacred part of the journey itself. As a guide who is unafraid to reveal his own path, the narrator recalls, there was a night when I found myself beneath a moonless sky, surrounded by a depth of darkness so complete it seemed to erase the horizon. At first I thought I would be swallowed by it, but instead I felt an unexpected serenity. In that silence, I realized that darkness can also be a cradle. By sharing this personal memory, he offers the listener not only authority, but also intimacy, showing that what appears hidden often holds the very nourishment the soul longs for. The block closes with a poetic invitation. Just as black holes conceal worlds we have not yet understood, within every human being lies a secret chamber, untouched and waiting to be explored. At every moment, the universe invites us to cross that threshold and rediscover what it truly means to exist. This is the beginning of the journey, a call to see science as metaphor and metaphysics as the timeless language through which revelation arrives. time that bends the intersection of quantum physics, metaphysics, and the expansion of consciousness. The narrator gently leads the listener into a reflection on the very fabric of time itself, reminding them that black holes do more than bend space. They warp and fold the very notion of past and future. For a distant observer, the approach toward a black hole may appear frozen, almost motionless, while for one near its edge, it becomes a vertiginous collapse into the unknown. Life carries the same paradox. A single moment can feel like centuries of learning compressed into an instant. The mentor teaches that understanding this truth requires opening to a greater realization, that time is not rigid or linear, but a living fabric, pliable and curved, capable of folding in upon itself. He speaks in the third person, guiding the listener with the clarity of a seasoned traveler through unseen realms. The mentor observes that each individual inhabits their own private curve of time. When confronted with experiences of profound intensity, the inner clock dilates and stretches. He compares it to moments of deep grief or to the arrival of unexpected love, when time seems to halt and expand simultaneously. Physics names this temporal dilation. Metaphysics interprets it as a shift in states of consciousness, moving beyond the ordinary chronology into a timeless awareness. As a practice, the narrator extends a gentle invitation. Sit quietly for a few minutes in stillness. Choose one significant event from your life. Allow yourself to notice how vividly that moment continues to live within you, even after many years. Realize that what you feel proves time is more elastic than you were taught to believe. Through this exercise, the listener discovers that memory is not merely a recording of the past. It is a living doorway, a subtle access point to dimensions where consciousness moves freely, unbound by the calendar and the ticking hands of human clocks. The narrator then offers a personal reflection to deepen authority. I recall witnessing a total solar eclipse when the world itself seemed to hold its breath. Minutes passed, yet they expanded into something far larger, an eternity compressed into a single heartbeat. In those suspended moments, the ordinary dissolved, and every sound, every sensation felt like the pulse of the entire cosmos. This memory reinforces the idea that just as black holes challenge our understanding of physical time, the human soul can access thresholds where infinity blends seamlessly into the present. He reminds the listener that the human mind carries this ability in daily life. Whether reading with full attention, entering meditation, or immersing oneself in creative flow, the sensation of time inevitably shifts. This is not illusion. It is both a physical and spiritual phenomenon. The mentor explains that each act of mindful presence functions like approaching the event horizon of one's personal black hole. The linear stream of seconds begins to dissolve, giving way to a state of expanded consciousness. Within this expanded field, one comes closer to the essence of reality itself. The block closes with a poetic invitation. When the ticking of the clock insists on trapping your existence in seconds and hours, remember this. Eternity is not hidden in some distant future. It dwells within the now. Time, like light, is fluid and pliable. By surrendering fully to the living experience of each passing instant, you participate in the very mystery that governs the black holes themselves, the timeless revelation that the present moment is, and has always been, infinite. Information is never lost. The eternal flow of information in the cosmos and in consciousness. The narrator begins by reminding the listener that, according to modern physics, even in the face of a black hole, a profound question remains unresolved. Does the information about what has fallen inside vanish forever, or does it persist in some subtle, invisible form? Science continues to debate this paradox, but the metaphor it carries for human life is luminous and clear. Nothing that we experience is ever truly lost. Every encounter, every decision, every fleeting thought leaves behind subtle imprints, not only upon memory, but also within the invisible field that shapes our awareness and forms the very fabric of reality itself. He speaks with the certainty of a mentor unveiling an ancient secret. The universe is a silent archivist. Everything you feel, think, or create does not simply disappear. It becomes vibration, recorded energy that is woven into the great cosmic network. Life, then, is not merely a series of disconnected instants that vanish into nothingness. It is an unbroken narrative where every gesture, every word, and every silence reverberates across unseen dimensions, often in ways we cannot yet comprehend or describe. As a simple but profound practice, the narrator proposes, today, write down on a piece of paper a decision you once made, one that changed your path. Then reflect on how the consequences of that single choice are still alive in your present reality. This exercise reveals that nothing fades into oblivion. Everything branches out into living currents. Just as physicists theorize that black holes may encode information upon their very horizons, human beings carry subtle records etched into the edges of their consciousness, quietly shaping identity and destiny. And the mentor shares a personal analogy to ground the teaching in lived experience. I remember a book I read during my youth, which at the time seemed trivial, almost forgettable. Yet years later, a single sentence from its pages resurfaced unexpectedly, becoming a silent compass that guided my choices without me realizing it. Through this reflection, he demonstrates that information does not vanish. It reinvents itself, lying dormant until the right moment arrives, when it can blossom into practical wisdom and transformation. He expands the lesson further, reminding the listener that quantum physics speaks of entanglement. Particles, no matter how far apart across the universe, remain mysteriously connected, moving in harmony. In a similar way, the experiences we live weave themselves into the field of our being. Even when forgotten, they can suddenly manifest in new contexts, revealing themselves as guides. To understand this is to realize that within each person resides not only memories, but living codes, always prepared to reappear when life calls for them. The block concludes with a poetic reflection. Nothing is ever truly lost. Everything transforms. Every word spoken, every thought nurtured, every gesture of kindness or neglect is inscribed into eternity. The universe itself is a vast library of records, and you are one of them. To honor your own story is to recognize that you hold within you a field of information as infinite and intricate as the cosmos itself, where even the smallest details, long forgotten, remain as seeds awaiting the moment they will bloom into new life. Information is never lost. The eternal flow of information in the cosmos and in consciousness. The narrator begins by reminding the listener that, according to modern physics, even in the face of a black hole, a profound question remains unresolved. Does the information about what has fallen inside vanish forever? Or does it persist in some subtle, invisible form? Science continues to debate this paradox, but the metaphor it carries for human life is luminous and clear. Nothing that we experience is ever truly lost. Every encounter, every decision, every fleeting thought leaves behind subtle imprints, not only upon memory, but also within the invisible field that shapes our awareness and forms the very fabric of reality itself. He speaks with the certainty of a mentor unveiling an ancient secret. The universe is a silent archivist. Everything you feel, think, or create does not simply disappear. It becomes vibration, recorded energy that is woven into the great cosmic network. Life, then, is not merely a series of disconnected instants that vanish into nothingness. It is an unbroken narrative where every gesture, every word, and every silence reverberates across unseen dimensions, often in ways we cannot yet comprehend or deise. The meeting of time and eternity. The duality between linear time and the eternity that dwells within the human heart. The narrator begins by reminding the listener that, around a black hole, time behaves in radically different ways depending on perspective. To the outside observer, events near the horizon seem to slow down, almost to the point of stopping altogether. To the one who is falling inward, however, the flow of time continues normally, as though nothing had changed at all. This scientific paradox also unveils a metaphysical truth. There are, in fact, two layers of time. One is measured by clocks, calendars, and appointments. The other resides within, where eternity pulses in the stillness of the present moment. He explains in the third person that the mentor portrays human life as a continuous dance between these two dimensions. On the outer stage, people rush to meet deadlines, fulfill duties, and chase goals. Yet inwardly, beneath that surface urgency, there's a timeless river always available, flowing quietly, offering the soul rest and renewal. Physics reveals that time can dilate, stretching and bending under the influence of gravity. Metaphysics reminds us that eternity is never absent. It is always here, waiting to be recognized. It is in this subtle meeting point that true awakening of consciousness begins. The narrator then proposes a gentle, practical exercise. Sit in silence for a few minutes and choose an object in front of you. It might be a simple cup, a leaf on a plant, or even your own hands resting quietly. Observe it without rush, as though time itself had paused to allow you to see. This practice demonstrates how, when urgency is suspended, eternity silently seeps into ordinary moments. Through such pauses, the listener begins to notice that the present holds a vastness far greater than what the eyes alone can measure. He shares a personal memory to illustrate the teaching. There was an evening when I sat by the ocean, listening to the rhythm of the waves. I realized they did not obey the strict ticking of any clock. They rose and fell as they had for centuries, untouched by human schedules. In that moment, I understood that eternity is not something distant to be sought in galaxies far away. It is already here, resonating in every heartbeat, in every breath of the now. This reflection grounds the lesson in lived experience and gives authority to the mentor's voice. But the mentor then deepens the reflection, affirming that to live only within chronological time is to live as a prisoner of hours and deadlines. To learn to touch eternity, however, is to step into the spiritual dimension of existence. Just as gravity bends and distorts the space-time continuum near a black hole, human consciousness, too, can bend its perception of time when anchored in inner stillness. In those rare yet accessible moments, seconds stretch into eternity, and entire days can pass as softly as a sigh. The block concludes with a poetic invitation. The outer world will always continue to run, guided by its relentless ticking hands. But within you lies a realm where eternity rests, unchanging and serene. Whoever learns to dwell in this hidden space discovers that the present moment is wider and deeper than any imagined future or remembered past. It is in this sacred meeting, between the outer flow of time and the inner stillness of eternity, that true freedom is born. The observer and the reality shaped. The role of the observer in the creation of reality. The narrator begins by reminding the listener that, in the quantum realm, the very act of observation alters the behavior of particles. An electron, when left unmeasured, can exist as a wave of probabilities, yet when observed, it collapses into a precise form, choosing to appear either as a wave or as a particle. This phenomenon carries a profound revelation. Consciousness is not a passive spectator, but an active participant in shaping reality itself. Life mirrors this truth. What we choose to see with intention takes on greater strength, while what we ignore dissolves as though it had never existed at all. Speaking in the third person, the mentor explains with clarity. He invites the listener to recognize that the human gaze functions like an invisible brush upon the canvas of existence. Wherever attention is placed, energy blooms and takes form. Wherever attention is withdrawn, form dissolves back into potential. This understanding has the power to transform the way one lives, for it shows that every person is, in essence, a co-creator of reality, not only through their actions, but also through the way they perceive, interpret, and assign meaning to the world around them. As a practical exercise, the narrator suggests, during your day, select one simple detail in your surroundings, the song of a bird, the touch of a loved one's hand, or the texture of an object you hold. Observe it with patience, without rushing, as though it were the first time you had truly seen it. Allow your attention to rest fully upon it. Through this practice, the listener discovers that reality is not fixed or rigid, but malleable, deeply responsive to the focus of consciousness. In this way, everyday experience becomes an experiment in quantum living. He then shares a personal experience to bring authority and intimacy to the lesson. There was a time when I walked across a square I thought I knew well. On that day, I chose to pause and observe a single tree. By truly looking, I saw colors, movements, and even fragrances I had never noticed before. What had always seemed ordinary transformed into a living temple of revelation. This story illustrates how the simple act of attentive observation can transfigure the world, turning what once appeared mundane into something extraordinary and sacred. And the mentor reinforces the core teaching by emphasizing that both quantum physics and metaphysics converge on this point. To be a conscious observer is to accept responsibility for the quality of the reality one inhabits. When the gaze is shaped by fear or doubt, life contracts, becoming narrow and heavy. But when the gaze is filled with curiosity, reverence, and trust, life expands with light and possibility. This is why cultivating mindful awareness is more than just a spiritual exercise. It is an interior technology of quantum creation, accessible to anyone willing to practice it. And the block concludes with a poetic reflection. You are not merely a traveler drifting through the universe, but an artisan of worlds. Each gaze you offer is a seed of reality being sown into the cosmos. When you truly recognize this, the ordinary becomes sacred, and what was invisible becomes tangible. The observer within you holds the astonishing power to redraw the very patterns of existence, and every moment, no matter how small, can be the first step toward creating a more conscious, awakened life. Collapse and rebirth. Inner transformation as a reflection of quantum and cosmic dynamics. The narrator begins by reminding the listener that at the very heart of a black hole, everything that crosses the threshold appears to collapse into a point of no return. Yet science now suggests that within this apparent ending may also lie the seed of beginnings, perhaps even the birth of entirely new universes. The metaphor is clear and profound. In life, what we often call collapse can, in truth, become the fertile soil for renewal and transformation. The mentor explains that what feels like a fall, no matter how painful, is often an invisible reorganization, preparing us for new possibilities that could never have arisen without the breaking open of the old. He speaks in the third person, as though unveiling a timeless secret. The mentor teaches that no rupture is ever truly empty. Even when everything appears to be lost, energy does not vanish. It simply transforms, shifting into another form of expression. Just as quantum physics reveals that nothing is extinguished but only converted into a new state of reality, so too does the soul learn that every ending carries within itself the seed of another beginning, quietly waiting for its moment to bloom. As a practice, the narrator invites the listener. Recall a moment in your life when something ended. A job, a relationship, a cycle you thought would last forever. Now take a breath and notice what was born out of that ending. Perhaps it was a new strength, a hidden ability, a friendship, or an insight you never imagined you had. This exercise shows that every collapse holds within it a hidden rebirth. Just as matter is reshaped under extreme pressure, so too does consciousness flower and expand in the midst of rupture and apparent loss. He shares a personal memory to anchor the lesson in lived experience. There was a time when I lost something I believed to be essential. In that moment, I felt as though I had been swallowed by emptiness itself, as if a void had consumed me. Yet years later, I realized that it was that very void that had taught me to discover within myself resources I had never before accessed. Without that collapse, I might never have been reborn. Through this story, he illustrates that the abyss we fear may, in truth, be a passageway to deeper life. The mentor expands the teaching further, explaining that both spirituality and quantum physics converge on the same insight. Reality is not fixed but dynamic. What may seem like ruin is often nothing more than a transition of state. Just as water can shift from liquid to vapor to ice without losing its essence, the human soul also transforms into different expressions of itself across the seasons of existence. To recognize this movement is to learn not to fear collapse, but to embrace it as an inevitable process of evolution. The blog concludes with a poetic image. When life feels like a vortex swallowing everything, remember that even the universe conceals within its collapses the promise of new worlds. An ending is never truly an end. It is a hidden womb of possibilities where consciousness renews itself. Those who learn to welcome collapse as part of the journey awaken to a greater wisdom. That every fall carries within it the quiet miracle of rebirth. The quantum silence. The void as the fertile ground of consciousness and wisdom. The narrator begins by reminding the listener that at the deepest level of quantum physics, there exists an invisible field where particles mysteriously appear and vanish in absolute stillness. This emptiness is not absence, it is latent fullness, an ocean of infinite possibilities waiting to be born. The mentor explains that, in a parallel way, within every human being there is also such a silent field, a space where ideas, intuitions, and entirely new ways of being wait patiently for the right moment to emerge into life. He speaks in the third person, guiding the listener with gentleness. The mentor invites each soul to recognize that silence is not an enemy, but a source. In silence, the noise of the mind softens, and the unseen finally has room to reveal itself. Just as the quantum vacuum holds the potential of everything that exists, the inner stillness of a human being is the space where the soul touches clarity and strength. It is here that mystery draws near and knowledge ripens into wisdom. As a practice, the narrator suggests, take a few minutes each day to simply be in silence. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, and allow yourself to observe your thoughts without following them. Gradually, you will notice that between one thought and the next, there are small intervals. These intervals are like doorways, tiny cracks through which eternity shines. In this way, the listener begins to experience that silence is not empty, but a fertile field where consciousness can take root and expand. He shares a personal memory that anchors the lesson in lived truth. There was a time when I sought answers tirelessly in books, in debates, in endless analysis. Yet one quiet morning I realized that the clarity I had been chasing was always there, in the pause between one thought and another. It was in that instant I understood that silence speaks louder than all words combined. This memory reveals that true transformation arises not in accumulation of knowledge, but in the courage to listen to what is not spoken. The mentor reinforces that both science and spirituality point toward the same horizon. Silence is the fabric that sustains creation itself. Without silence, there would be no music, only noise. Without the space between particles, there would be no movement, no universe. In the same way, without moments of inner quiet, there is no renewal of the self. To recognize this is to answer a subtle calling, to cultivate pauses, for they are the bridges through which the invisible steps into visibility. But the block closes with a poetic cadence. Silence is the secret language of the universe. Within it, eternity whispers, and consciousness blossoms. Whoever learns to dwell in this space discovers that there is no need to search far for what already rests within. Silence is portal, cradle, and revelation. And each time you surrender to its embrace, a new version of yourself quietly begins to be born. The power of small conscious gestures. How simple actions, performed with presence, resonate in the quantum and spiritual universe. The narrator begins by reminding us that, at the quantum level, even the tiniest movement carries an undeniable impact. The vibration of a single particle can alter the behavior of an entire system. Life mirrors this principle. Gestures that seem insignificant, a careful gaze, a gentle word, a respectful silence, have the power to transform the field around us. The mentor teaches that it is within these conscious details that the greatness of true transformation quietly reveals itself. He speaks in the third person, unfolding the lesson. The mentor shows that living consciously does not demand grand heroic acts, but rather the ability to recognize the sacred hidden in the ordinary. It is in the way one prepares a morning coffee, the way one crosses a street, or the way one listens without distraction that the universe is quietly reconfigured. Metaphysics reminds us that the energy we invest in each action always returns. And quantum physics confirms that all things are linked by subtle vibrations that ripple through the whole. As a practice, the narrator suggests, choose one simple activity from your day, such as drinking a glass of water. Do it slowly, feeling the weight of the cup in your hand, the freshness of the liquid, and the path it takes as it flows into your body. Allow this ordinary gesture to become a sacred experience. This exercise reveals that conscious action is a living portal of expansion. When one learns to be fully present in even the smallest acts, it becomes clear that daily life itself is the most fertile ground for profound spiritual transformation. He shares a personal memory to anchor the lesson in lived truth. I remember when I first learned to listen without interrupting. I discovered that, more often than not, the other person did not need my answers but only needed space. By practicing this simple gesture, I witnessed entire relationships shift and blossom. In that moment, I realized that consciousness is not measured by the number of words spoken, but by the quality of presence offered. This lived experience shows that true transformation is born not from the extraordinary, but from the humble. But the mentor deepens the teaching, explaining that every conscious gesture is like a wave that expands far beyond what the eye can see. Just as a single stone cast into a lake creates ripples that extend across the water's surface, our actions, however small, echo through unseen dimensions. This principle bridges quantum physics and spirituality. Nothing we do, not even in silence, is irrelevant. Every gesture is information released into the cosmic fabric, and one day it returns, magnified and reshaped. But the block closes with poetic resonance. When you learn to honor the small acts, you discover that you are weaving reality thread by thread. Each conscious choice is like a point of light sewn into the fabric of the universe. And when you look back, you will see that it was never the grand accomplishments that truly shaped your life, but the constancy of small gestures, repeated with love, with presence, and with intention. The interweaving of souls, the invisible interconnection that unites consciousness as a living quantum web. The narrator begins by evoking the mystery of quantum entanglement. Particles that, even when separated by billions of miles, continue to respond to one another as if they were a single entity. The mentor explains that this is not only a scientific phenomenon, but also a living metaphor for human relationships. Just as particles remain bound, souls too become intertwined. Every encounter, every exchange of a glance, every gesture of affection creates invisible threads that remain active, even when time and distance appear to divide. He speaks in the third person, describing calmly. The mentor teaches that no true bond is ever lost. Even when people follow different paths, what was once shared continues to pulse as vibration in the invisible field. This is why a memory can warm the heart years later, or why a word from someone far away can echo in the mind during moments of silence. The field of consciousness functions like a quantum fabric, preserving and sustaining the essence of these connections. As a practice, the narrator gently suggests, bring to mind someone who once marked your life but is no longer part of your daily routine. Close your eyes and imagine sending that person a silent thought of gratitude. Feel how your own energy shifts in that very moment. This exercise demonstrates that distance is no barrier to the bond of consciousness. Just as in entanglement, the connection remains alive, beyond time, beyond space. He shares a personal memory to give weight and warmth to the teaching. I recall a friendship that was scattered by the geography of the years. Yet the moment I heard a song we once cherished together, I felt that person's presence as if no time had passed. It was then I realized that what unites two souls cannot be measured in kilometers, but only in resonance. This lived testimony reveals that authentic bonds are not abstractions, but living realities. But the mentor expands the lesson further, affirming that this invisible web of connections links not only individuals, but entire communities. When one person rises in awareness, their vibration subtly touches others, even those unaware of it. This is why it is often said that personal transformation is also a service to the world. Every act of inner expansion radiates outward, stirring the collective field like silent ripples that awaken those ready to listen. Book the block closes with poetic resonance. We are threads of one vast cosmic tapestry. Each soul is a point of light interwoven with countless others, forming a pattern too grand for any single eye to perceive. To recognize this web is to know that we never walk alone. There is always an echo of ourselves within the other, and an echo of the other within us. And in this interweaving, we discover that life itself is a quantum communion of consciousness. Closing, the continuous awakening. synthesizing the journey, and inviting the constant expansion of consciousness. The narrator begins by recalling that throughout this journey, the listener has traveled through black holes, quantum fields, fertile silences, and invisible entanglements. The mentor explains that each step was not mere theory, but a living invitation to transformation. He reminds that what has been absorbed here is not simply knowledge, but a living seed. And like every seed, it must be nurtured daily, through small, conscious gestures that sustain the soul's expansion. Speaking in the third person, as if guiding a sacred closure, the voice continues. The mentor reminds the listener that true change does not lie in hearing beautiful words, but in transforming them into steps. Just as quantum physics shows that observation itself alters reality. The decision to apply what was heard reshapes the field of one's own life. Wisdom is not housed only in ideas. It lives in the practice that makes the invisible tangible and present. As a final practice, the narrator suggests, choose one idea from this journey that touched your soul. Perhaps it was silence, expanded time, or the strength of small gestures. For the next few days, apply it consciously. Notice how your energy shifts and how your perception of the world begins to transform. This simple act ensures that the listener does not merely learn wisdom, but lives it, transmuting concepts into living experience. He shares a personal remembrance. I recall when I first heard of the power of the observer. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a distant theory. But when I applied it in a simple act, looking at daily life with more attention, I discovered that existence itself could be transformed. It was then I learned that spirituality does not dwell in abstract ideas, but in each moment lived with presence. This memory seals the invitation for the listener to do the same. And the mentor then broadens the horizon. Each person who chooses to awaken expands the collective field. By liking, commenting, and subscribing, you not only strengthen this space, but also become part of a quantum network of consciousness, souls who support and illuminate one another. The act of support ceases to be merely digital. It becomes a gesture of expansion. Transformation multiplies, reaching others who seek light within the shadows. The block closes with a poetic vision. The journey does not end here. It continues in every breath, in every conscious gaze, in every silence embraced. May you walk knowing that the universe is more vast than imagination can hold, and that within you rests the same force that governs both stars and atoms. Awakening is continuous, and in opening your eyes to the now, you discover eternity has always been in your hands. And so, see you in the next video, with more information on everything that involves growing, evolving, transforming, and manifesting. See you soon.